I'm Thurston County Auditor Mary Hall. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. We are very excited that we've got so many signed up today. Observers are really, really important to the election process. And we've worked really hard to expand this program and bring in as many observers as we can, because I think it's important for people to really understand, how do the elections work? You know, we're not behind closed doors. It's a very open process in a warehouse-like environment. And, you know, our goal is for people to understand elections, ask questions. We want to be as transparent as possible. And we want to ensure that people trust the process. We use our extra help staff come from all walks of life, that we don't use volunteers, they're all paid. And this is a really, really busy election for us. Midterms and presidential elections are certainly the busiest. So keep that in mind when you're observing. And there are a lot of things happening at the same time. They're interlocking processes, which we're going to explain some of those today, so you'll have a better understanding of how elections work. Because the thing to keep in mind when you're observing is we operate under really tight deadlines. We can't move election day. We can't move certification. So we have to get all that work done during that time. So we'll make sure that you have access to somebody that can answer all of your questions, and that you can see all of the processes that are going on, keeping in mind that it's important to also give workers space. So during this training, you're going to learn a little bit about the process, so you're going to understand what you're observing. And the election folks who are doing this presentation will take you through all the steps. So I want to thank you for being here. I know it's a time commitment, and being an observer is also a time commitment. So I hope that your participation is rewarding to you. And we appreciate your taking part in our democratic process, because it's very important that we be open and transparent to build trust. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my staff who will be doing the presentation today. Jack Mongan, singing Jeff, is one of our presenters today. He is a rock star. He's been with us for several years. Jamie Davidsmeyer will also be doing the program. He's our education and outreach person. Jack is a technician out at the Ballot Processing Center. So he's the one that makes the machine work in many, many ways. So I will just go ahead and turn it over to you, and I will also stop video and mute myself. So take it away, folks.
All right, thank you, Mary. Thanks for being here. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Like Mary said, we know this is a time commitment. So one thing before we get started is that we're going to have plenty of time for questions. We will have some question slides built in throughout the presentation. So if you have a question, write it down. We want to hear it. We just want to get through our slides to the question slides before we open it up. We're hoping to use this training, to put on the website so that if people can't be here, they can check it out at on their own time and learn about the process. So can everybody, I assume you can still see the 2022 Observer. See that, Jack? Okay, thanks. Guys, give me a nod there. So let's start off. We'll go with the Observer mission statement. To provide an independent observation to maintain confidence in the transparency, integrity, and accuracy of the election process. So that's the big picture reason why you're all here, is to help provide that confidence in this process. So to that end, that's why we do this training. So this annual training is encouraged. This helps us to all start on the same page when we come to observe. So if you have been to this training before, you don't have to come, but you're welcome to stay. So yeah, your chair or lead observer for your party will establish your work schedule, and we are going to process. You can start when we start processing, but we're going to process whether there are observers or not, because we, like Mary said, we cannot move certain deadlines, so we have to keep going. Election dates. This is general. We have 4 elections every year, possibly 4 elections every year, and then possibly a 5th when we have a presidential primary. So we are always busy at the Ballot Processing Center, at the elections office. And yeah. So when you come to the facility to start your shift, once you've been trained, you've been scheduled, you're ready to go, the first thing you're going to want to do is come out to the Ballot Processing Center and enter through our Suite F door. There's a lot of signage there, so you should be able to see it. There is a system we call Lobby Guard, or it's a company that it basically what it does is it helps us keep track of who's in the building, and we keep a list of the people who visited. It gives you a badge, prints out a little badge, you put it on, and then you'll be shown into the facility and you'll be given a lanyard, and then you'll stay with your escort at all times, and we'll show you around, tell you what's going on. Not every day of ballot processing looks exactly the same, so we'll show you what's going on and get you set up. So yeah, when you have questions while you're observing, we have a lanyard guide, and it's on my next slide, so I'll show you in a second. But basically, your lanyard will always be blue. An observer will always have a blue lanyard, and you can see I have my green lanyard on. That denotes me as a full-time staff member. So all of our full-time staff members will have green lanyards. Red lanyards are for our part-time staff members. And so I'll just pull that up. There occasionally will be media, and we get them. There's a special black lanyard that they have for that. So, but they'll always be with a supervisor or manager whenever they're in the building. So, all right. So safety and security. Everyone in the Ballot Processing Center has to wear that badge. That's why you guys get a printed out one. We've got these plastic ones from the county. Voted ballots are locked and sealed when they're not being processed. The processing, everything is monitored by cameras. We have so many cameras. If you've been to our facility, you've seen the cameras. There are many of them. There's the one for the live stream. There's the one for security recording. There's the one for the security camera feed. There's cameras. So. And then there are observer areas, and they'll be clearly marked out, or we'll make sure that you can clearly see them. Depending on what we're doing, we sometimes have to move our stanchions around. So, but we'll make sure you know where to stand and where to be. So yeah, this is our security camera apparatus here. It's got everywhere on the building there. So we are still taking health precautions at the Ballot Processing Center, because we have to process the election by the time it needs to be certified. So we all have to stay healthy. You'll see we're still socially distancing. We're all wearing our masks. So please wear a mask when you come to our facility and maintain social distance. That also means we're allowing a limited number of observers. We're just doing 1 per party still at a time. So now, questions so far. I told you we'd have some question slides. So I don't know if you want to raise your hand if we have that ability. I'm not sure what's. Anybody got any questions? Oh, I see one hand up. Jen.
Hi. I missed the beginning. For those of us who had technical difficulties, will the initial slides be available at some point?
I think we can make I'm not sure if they're on the website now. We're definitely going to put up a recording. So yeah, we'll get you the information for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will be posting this. Yeah, we'll get the slides up. Yep. So I can't see everybody at once, so I apologize. I'm scrolling through my screen here. I don't see any other questions right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep moving for now. We're going to get into the actual ballot processing. So here's an overview of our ballot processing center. And this is how it currently looks with the post, the COVID precautions that we still have up and that are going to remain up. We used to have about twice as many people processing in this space as we do now. So that's, we've had to sometimes go to shifts and do some, we've had to change the way we do some of our practices based for COVID. So, but let's start with ballot intake. So first thing first is we have to get the ballots. This is one of our ballot, this is one of our ballot intake teams. They always wear elections vests. They're going out in teams of 2. We pick up from 29 ballot drop boxes around the county, the post office, and the voting centers that we have open. They have a couple of different routes, depending on the election, depending on the day, but it's always teams of 2, and then they go directly from where they get the ballots to our intake, and if they aren't into the intake area, they go directly into a sealed, they go into a secure storage area. So the first thing we have to do is prep the ballots for the sorter. Basically everything, we open the bags, get everything faced, make sure that everything is actually a ballot. Sometimes we get bills and other things from people who mistake our boxes for a mailbox. So we make sure that the teams of 2 make sure that the seal numbers on the bags they're opening match the seal numbers on the logs they got from the drivers. And then they remove those and face them, and they get ready to run them through the sorter for the first time. So basically, every ballot gets sorted at least twice. The first run is going to do a couple of things. It's going to take a picture of the signature, and then it's going to scan the barcode so that it can attach that signature to the right record. And then it's going to sort them into colored groups by precinct. We have precinct groupings. If you see on your, when you come in, you'll see there ballots have a little colored stripe in case our machine went down and we had to do it all by hand. First thing we would do is sort them into precinct groups and then down into the precinct level. Same thing the machine does. So it sorts them down into precinct groups, and then the signatures that are captured go to our signature verification team. And the ballots that have just been sorted are stored securely until they're ready, until they've been signature verified. So here's our, this is our sorter, one of our sorters. We actually have a new sorter now. This is our older one. And then in the background here, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, this is our newer sorter. It's quieter, and it's more mobile. We're just really excited about it. Works really well in the primary. So yeah, after it goes to that first sort, it goes over to signature verification. And this is some members of our signature verification team. So on the first look, this is where they're verifying your signature, that you are you. And so they've been trained through a Secretary of State approved annually training. They get a training annually. What happens is they get a screen with 4 signatures, 4 different voters, and then the signatures that we have on file for that voter under each one. And then they go through each one, match it, say accept or challenge. And then once we've completed that batch, they're ready. That file goes back to the sorter. We're ready to go. They're ready to go be sorted again. So yeah, what happens next? Second run. This is where we sort things down to the precinct level, and we kick out anything that was challenged in that signature verification process. So we run them back through the sorter, and this time instead of into those precinct groups, it batches them into, based on the day and the location where they're picked up, it puts them into precinct, single precincts. So, and then each of those gets a unique batch tag. It says how much, I'll show you that here in a second, how many are in each batch. And then all the other ones that have been challenged get kicked into another bin, and then they get put into another process that we will talk about here in a few minutes. And then once we're sure that all the challenge ballots are cleared from the accepted ballots, then we are ready to move to inspection. And Jack will pick that up here in a few minutes. So this is that batch tag I was just talking about. And you can see up here, there is, it shows the precinct number, when it came in, and then how many pieces were in that specific batch. So, and then these lines down here, Jack will talk about when we get to inspection. So let's see. Okay, signature verification, second look. So those ballots that got challenged, they go back into the signature verification process. They have a number of different codes that apply depending on what the reason was it got kicked out. Unsigned ballots get kicked out. Signature doesn't match, obviously that gets kicked out. Power of attorney gets kicked out. There's several different codes, and we'll show you all that when you're there. And we've got it, it's elsewhere on in our information. The signature does not match is checked 3 times, and then before that challenge code gets applied, because we have people who have done it for years, and they might see, you know, something that says, oh no, that is the person, we know for sure. We make sure that that it gets looked at 3 times before we apply a challenge code. So then challenge ballots. So then letters are sent to those people whose ballots have been challenged, so that they have a chance to fix that. They can, what's called, cure it. If no response, we call them and email them. We try to get a hold of them any way we can. And they've got to be back to us the day before certification to get to count. And we call that curing a ballot. And then once they get cured, we run them back through the sorter, and then they move on to inspection. So I know that was pretty quick, but that was kind of the intake process. As you'll see when you get to the facility, our building is kind of divided into roughly. The intake process happens on one side, and ballots that have only ballots that have been accepted can move on to the next side. So that's why we kind of broke it up like this. I see one question from John. Go ahead, Mr. Claybaugh.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I have a question about the signature verification. So the ones that don't get challenged on the first pass that are accepted, do those get looked at a second time as well, or do only the challenged signatures get looked at a second time?
No, they get a second look too. Yes, everything goes through that. Gets a second look. The challenge ballots get a third.
Okay.
And we yeah.
I do have another question as well.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh yeah, so the Dropbox pickups, are those all done by county employees, or do you use any contractors or third parties for that?
Nope, all county employees. Yep, all our staff. Yeah.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Cheryl.
Hi there. Thank you for doing that. I want to pick up on John's question a little bit. So when they pick up the ballots, what is the accountability measure for ensuring that all of the ballots that were there get picked up and that all of the ballots get delivered?
Jack, do you want to speak to this since you're one of our tech guys?
Of course.
Ballot processing.
So the first thing, so ballot pickup teams, always going in teams of 2. The very first thing they do when they get to a box is comparing the seal log that's on the actual physical box itself against what we have on the log to make sure that it didn't get moved or tampered with since we were last there to empty that box. At that time, that team of 2, one person will empty the box into one of our security bags that we have, and you'll see when you come to our facility what I'm referring to. And the other team, the other member will be there watching them doing it, making sure that every ballot from that box makes its way into that bag. At that time, they're going to seal that bag and put a seal on it and record it on that log. So at that time, once all all the ballots have made its way from the box into the bag and it's been sealed, we have the box is resealed as well. So from the time they go and check that, make sure that nothing happened to the box before they got there, and by the time they leave, the box has been resealed and the bag has been resealed. And that way, when it brings it back to our facility, we can check that that seal has been, that seal is still together and it matches the log to make sure that nothing to happen to that box or that bag of ballots during its transportation back to our facility.
Thank you.
And another thing too is you can always check your ballot status at votewa.gov, votewa.gov. That'll tell you whether it's been scanned in and what part of the process it's in.
There you go. And then you go down to the bottom where it says, there you go, please hand.
And, Scott, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, my question involves curing of ballots. How many folks do you got working on curing ballots, and how successful are you in curing, let's say, a bad signature or a no signature? What's the percentage of those that get cured?
I didn't crunch the numbers on the last election yet, but the last one I looked at was the 2021 general, and we had about 600, a little over 600 challenged, and we sent out a little over 600 challenge letters, and we got over half of those back. So that was just that election. I don't know, Jack, if you have any updated statistics for the last one, and then as far as the number of people, it depends on how close we are to the deadline, I guess. So
I can tell you that as far as challenge ballots that remain challenged by the time we certify an election, it's typically under 2%. Normally, sometimes it's under 1%, but it's between that under 1% to 1.5%, usually typically in that range of ballots that we send out a cure letter form, but nothing is returned for that voter. So typically it's over 50% of a challenged ballots that we do receive a cure form back for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions that we can answer?
all right, well, we'll move on to the next slide, and I'm going to let Jack take over for a little bit, and I will step back.
All right, thank you, Jamie. So what I'm going to talk about today, it's going to be ballot inspection, and then I'm going to move on to talk about a variety of the tests and audits that we conduct here in Thurston County. So first, ballot inspection. So I think it's important to remember that these are only those accepted ballots that have been gone through the signature verification process, and they've been audited. So once those signatures match, they're ready to come over here. So ballots are brought over in a batch. And what a batch is, like that tag we saw, it's a group of ballots that has a count and a precinct attached to them. So each batch of those ballots is opened by one of our opening machines, and it's handed to an inspector. Those inspectors will go through, and they're looking at each envelope to make sure that the count, the number of ballots, matches what the tag says it should be, and that all of those envelopes are the correct precinct. Now, if everything matches, they're able to fill out their logs, and they can continue on with inspection. The next step is that the secrecy sleeves that have the ballot are removed from the outer envelope that has the signature on it. This process is repeated for every ballot in the batch until at the end we have all the secrecy sleeves with the ballots, and we have all of the empty outer envelopes. Those empty envelopes are gathered together. They're verified as empty by looking through the hole in the middle, and they are placed away in a tray. Now, this is an example of those logs I was referring to. We have the batch tag on the left, the same one from before, so we know that we should have 50 pieces of the precinct 406. So once we go and verify that that count is accurate, we'd fill it where it says initials, or we put our initials for the first check, and then on our sheet on the right-hand side where it says first check, we would put the precinct number 406 and the total ballots received of 50. So once we have both of our yellow forms filled out, we'd be all right to start the next step of ballot inspection. But before we talk about that, I'm going to talk briefly about the Opex openers. This is one of our most recent additions to our ballot processing center. And what these machines help with is help open and extract the ballots from the oath envelopes. The operators, before running the machine, will verify the precinct and the count of the ballot batch they received, and then they're going to open and extract the secrecy sleeves. The batches are then taken from the Opex machine to a ballot inspector for the first check. And next, we're going to have just a picture of those machines. So when you come to inspect, this is one of the machines you may see operating. All right. So from this stage, all of the identifying information of the voter has been removed from the ballot. We have a group of ballots that are in their secrecy sleeves, and we have no way of tying them back to any specific voter. Those secrecy sleeves, the ballots are then removed from those secrecy sleeves, and the sleeves are set aside in a different tray after we verify that they're empty. Each individual ballot is visually inspected to make sure it's the correct precinct of the group the inspector is working on, and to ensure that the scanners can read the ballot. The ballots are then separated into two piles. One is the ballots that need further action to be read. And examples can be if there's a voter intent, like for instance, they made a correction on the ballot. If the ballot is torn, if someone spilled their coffee on the ballot, marks in the timing areas, there's plenty of reasons a ballot would not be able to be read by our machines. In the other pile are the ballots that are ready to be scanned. After each ballot has been put in a pile, the ballots in each stack are counted to make sure that the original number identified on the batch tag is still true. So if you had 50 ballots, we want to make sure that the totals of the ballots ready to scan and the ballots that need further attention equal 50. If they match, they're written on that log we saw earlier, and we move on to second check. Now, ballot inspection second check. So each batch that is inspected by a first checker is then again inspected by a lead checker. These are our employees who've been returning election after election, and they're very good at what they do. They again look at each individual ballot for a second time, making sure it is indeed scannable or if it needs further action. The precincts are checked again, all ballots are counted again, and everything is logged again. Now, during this process, it is normal for some ballots to move. Perhaps a first checker, moved a ballot from, they thought it wouldn't be able to scan, but the second checker knows it will be able to scan, so they move it. After they are finished moving things from one pile to another, they do another count of the ballot stacks to make sure it still matches that original number on the batch tag. And there is a few other jobs you may see happening over in ballot inspection. Here's a picture of it in action where you can see the first checkers and the second checkers working. A few of the other jobs you may see is what is referred to as consolidation or third check. These ballots that come from second check, those ballots that need further attention, which are placed in those large manila envelopes we saw earlier, they're counted to make sure what is put on the outside on the log, what is written matches what is inside of the manila envelope. The ballots that are ready to be scanned are fanned through to check the precinct to make sure there's no precinct that doesn't match the group. The ballots then are put into the proper precinct trays in preparation for scanning, which you will see a picture of soon. Other jobs you may see are floor runners and leads. Now, throughout this whole process of inspection, if anything doesn't match or any of the inspectors have any questions or are not sure what to do, you'll see them raise their hand. When that happens, a floor runner or a lead will go to them. They'll make sure that they're able to answer their questions or basically help with whatever needs to be helped with. In addition, you'll see them bringing batches to inspectors, removing those empty envelopes after the batches have been disassembled, and moving batches from first checkers to second checkers and then to the consolidation table. So these are people you'll see moving about throughout the whole day, making sure everyone has what they need to do their job. Now here's that picture I was referencing. So each one of those colored trays has a number on it. and each number corresponds to a precinct. So what these workers are doing are taking ballots that have been accepted and are good to scan, and they are putting it into the tray that corresponds with that precinct. We do this for the next step when it gets time to scan the ballots. Now I'm going to talk about scanning versus tabulation. These are two processes that you may see happen at the Ballot Processing Center. The first is scanning. Now ballots, after they've been through inspection, can be scanned anytime when we are ballot processing. Groups of precincts are taken from those colored trays I referenced, and they're ran through the ES&S 850s. The machine is taking an image of the ballot only. It is making sure it can read it and taking that image. After ballots are scanned, they are sealed, logged, and placed in a ballot room. They're put in a box, and after they're logged with their security logs on it, they are placed in that secure ballot storage room that we have at the Ballot Processing Center. So we can do this throughout the process, but there is something we can only do at 8 p.m. on election night, and that is tabulation. So on election night, right at 8 p.m., all of those images that we have been scanning previously are tabulated. This is where the machine will go through the images and calculate how many votes each candidate and measure got. This is the first time we will have access to the election results. Now, that is the path for those ballots that are scannable. But now we have to talk about those ballots that aren't scannable, the ones that need further attention. There's two categories we're going to be talking about: duplication and resolving. Duplication is done when a ballot cannot be scanned by our scanners. For instance, if it's torn, coffee was spilled on it, there's writing in the timing marks or they were cut and removed. This is always done in teams of 2. The way it works is that one team member will have the original ballot that can't be read, while the other team member will have a blank ballot of the same precinct. They will both write the same serial number on the bottom of the ballot. That way, the original can always be tied back to the duplicate. The original will have a stamp through the timing marks, so it can never be read by our machine, and the duplicate will have a stamp on it, so we know it's a duplicate ballot. The first team member will complete the log while they read from the original and how it was voted. The second team member will mark that voter's choices on the duplicate ballot. Then, once they're done with this process, a different team of 2 will audit it. The first team member will read from the original, while the second team member who ensures that the proper choices were marked on the ballot. Now we do this to make sure that the voter's vote is counted as they intended. We are all human, so we sometimes make mistakes. So if someone was duplicating and made a mistake, we want to make sure that it's corrected and the vote is counted how the voter intended. Now, there are some ballots that the machines can read, but we have to make sure they are read the way the voter intended. To do this, we follow the Voter Intent Manual. It is state law put out by the Secretary of State. This booklet has statewide standards on what is a vote. This gives us, all counties in Washington, the same instructions for how to count corrections, follow written instructions, and a variety of other questions about intent we may have. Similar to duplication, this is done in teams of 2, and using our tabulation software, we're able to, on the screen, tell the computer how to read a certain vote. After the team of 2 tells the computer how to read it, it is audited by a different team of 2 who confirms that they told the computer the right thing. Once again, just like duplication, this is logged. All right, I know we covered a lot from inspection to duplication and resolving. So is there any questions I can answer about these processes? Yes, Scott?
How do you handle write-ins?
So that is an excellent question. I'm going to say most of the time, because there's always exceptions to some things when it has to do with the governor. But if you just vote for a write-in and you write the name next to it, The way it works is our tabulator program after election day, if the write-in is a declared candidate, we are able to run a report, and what it will do for that race, for anyone that voted for a write-in candidate, it can actually look at the images of those ballots, so we can count how many write-in candidates and who they actually voted for. But that's where that voter intent booklet comes in, because sometimes there are some situations where sometimes people write in a candidate who is already appearing on the ballot in that race. There's a lot of different scenarios that have happened over the times people have been voting, and all of the proper ways to count the intent of that voter are located in that booklet. So most of the time, that ballot can go through the process fine, and it can be scanned on the first time. But there's a lot of situations where it would need further intention to make sure the voter's intent is realized.
Hi, this is Donna. Can you hear me, Jack? Can you hear me,
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Hi. Would you address the new sleeves, why you went to that and what they mean? The sleeve instead of an inner envelope?
Yes, so that change, I believe that first took place in 2020, where we went from security envelopes to secrecy sleeves. Part of that is the process of, at least for us, it is, the whole reason it's there is to basically that anyone's vote who they write on the ballot, that you wouldn't be able to see that through the envelope. So people know that their vote is kept secret. We have a lot of security measures in place, but the purpose of that sleeve is to keep a vote secret. So throughout the process, when your name can be attached to your envelope, when we can see your signature, we want to make sure there's no way to see the particular way they voted. So that is the purpose of having a secrecy sleeve, because that is what it provides. And to answer further of that process, I'm going to turn it over to Auditor Hull.
Thanks, Jack. So during the 2000 COVID outbreak early in the year, nobody really knew how COVID was transferred. So we didn't want, licking an envelope, is that going to transfer it? There were so many unknowns in early 2020. So that's when we made this decision to go to a secrecy sleeve, which actually many counties in Washington state use that because it's actually more efficient for processing. It's much easier to pull the ballot out and really accomplishes the same thing. So that was my decision, and that's why we did it. Come to find out, the envelopes would have been just fine, but it's still a lot more efficient.
Any other questions in this section we can answer?
Yes, I have one.
Yes, Tyrone.
How do you determine the ballot is from a legal citizen?
Back in the signature verification process? Mary, do you want to speak to this or?
Absolutely. So there are several things that happen. When voters fill out their voter registration form, they make an attestation that they are citizens of the United States. And I know there are a lot of people who think there are a lot of non-citizens voting. However, people are in this country because they want to live here. And if they're not citizens and they get caught voting, they're deported. So it really isn't an issue. And the reason, and how we know it's the voter, is we verify the signature that is on the envelope against the signature that we have on file for that voter when they registered to vote. So it's not a sampling. We check it for every single voter.
But how do you verify that indeed they are citizens?
That's up to the voter. The voter signs an oath that they are a citizen, but there's no national citizen database in this country. Any other questions? I also want to bring up that if anybody thinks that non-citizens are voting, they can challenge that voter registration. So there are ways to do it, but we don't have the authority to be the policing agent. Our job is to conduct the elections and process the ballots and report results.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on inspection, duplication, and resolving I may answer? In that case, we're going to move on to talk about the different tests and audits that we perform out here at the Ballot Processing Center. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the logic and accuracy test. This test takes place before the election, and we do this to make sure that our equipment is tabulating and scanning votes the way it should. We do this to demonstrate the accuracy of our tabulation equipment. First, we use a marked ballot test deck. What this is a test deck of all the ballots of all of our precincts where we know the results. That way we can make sure that the machines, our tabulators, are reading the results the way they should. All 3 of our scanners are tested, and our tabulation system is as well. All of our precincts are tested. The way the test deck is filled out, for each precinct, the first response in each race or measure is marked once. And then for each race, the second response has 2 votes marked for it. It continues on where if there is a third vote or third response in that race, it has 3 votes, and so on and so forth. In addition to those ways, there is a blank ballot that is also tested, overvotes for each race, and a ballot which is marked by an express vote voting unit, which is a voter accessibility voting unit. This way, we can test our machine with every precinct, every response, and every type of ballot that the machines will see during an election. Each machine is tested to make sure the expected results come off of it correctly, and then the tabulation machine or the tabulation system is tested to make sure that all 3 machines, when they upload to the tabulation computer, that the right results are displayed. Now, this test is open to the public, and it is held here at our Ballot Processing Center. We do one before every election. But that is not the only audit or test that we do for each election. After each election day, we do a post-random audit. Now, post-random audit is conducted, again, to ensure that our tabulation system is counting ballots accurately. How it works is that 3 precincts are chosen by random. 1 race or measure is selected for the audit. Those ballots are ran through the scanners, and a report is printed with the results of that precinct. Then those results are placed into an envelope and sealed. The ballots are then hand counted for that specified race or measure, and then after they're counted, they're checked to ensure that they match how the machine counted them. Now, why do we do this? A post-election random audit ensures the accuracy of the tabulation system. Now, either the precincts for this are chosen randomly, or otherwise, if the 2 major parties, if they can come to an agreement, they may actually choose the 3 precincts which are selected for the audit. Now, finally, I'm going to talk about the most complicated audit and newest audit that we do here at the Ballot Processing Center. This is known as a risk limiting audit. So a risk limiting audit, also known as an RLA, is a post-election audit that ensures the reported election results match what voters selected. It checks to see that any other election outcome did not happen. This is done by selecting a sample of ballots and comparing the votes on the paper ballots against how the tabulator read the same ballots. We have performed 4 RLAs, and there have been 0 discrepancies between the paper ballot samples and how the tabulator read them. So how is it done? It is done in partnership with the Secretary of State and Voting Works, the vendor of the Arlo program. This is an open source software that exists for the purpose of conducting RLAs. Arlo helps us with 3 things. First, it gives us a random sample of ballots to collect. Second, Arlo helps us enter the results from the sample and performs a comparison. And finally, Arlo gives us the results of the audit. We make a copy of what's called the cast vote record, or CVR, from our tabulator. This is a list of ballots that have been scanned and how the ballots were voted. We upload this copy into Arlo. At no time do any files that have been entered into Arlo get loaded back into our tabulator system. It only goes one way. Using this uploaded list, Arlo selects a sample of ballots for us to collect. After checking that the seals on the ballot boxes are secure, we remove the ballots from their sealed boxes. Next, we enter the votes from the collected paper ballots into the software. Arlo will then compare the paper ballots against how the CVR read those same ballots. Now we are ready for the audit results. Before the audit, the SOS sets what's called a risk limit. This is like the score you need to pass an exam. In the past RLAs, we've used risk limit of 5%. This means that we must score 95% or higher to pass an audit. When the comparison is done, Arlo gives us what's called a confidence interval. This is like a score in an exam. So if we have a risk limit of 5% and get a confidence interval of 97%, we would pass the audit. We've passed all 4 audits we have done so far. So why do we do this? In addition to our current tests and audits, it is another way of making sure that errors in our elections are detected. It checks that no significant results changing error has occurred. All right, now I have a few other processes to talk about before we finish. Reconciliation. So what is reconciliation? It happens at each step throughout the process, and a final reconciliation is completed to certify the election. This report shows that the ballots received in the ballot processing center, minus any ballots that are rejected and not counted, equal the total number of ballots counted. So this is the math that we're working on every day. You'll see us in the different parts when we're doing intake, when we're doing sig-ver and inspection, and it comes together at the end for the total accounting of what ballots were received, challenged, and accepted during an election. So it's time. We've gone through this whole process for all of the ballots for an election. We've done our tests, we've done our audits, we've counted every ballot we can. It is time for the canvassing and certifying of results. So the canvassing board members or their designees are the Thurston County Auditor, the prosecuting attorney, and the chair of the Board of County Commissioners. They meet because only they can determine voter intent if it's not in the statewide manual. They can reject ballots and they can certify the election. All right. Now, is there any questions we can answer about the material we just covered? John?
Thank you. It's not about the material, but I do have an observer who was trying to attend and didn't get the confirmation email. Will this be posted to your website afterwards?
Yes. Yes, this will.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any additional questions we can answer?
I had a question about what happens if there's a variance greater than 5%, and I'm delighted that you're able to report that you haven't had any of those. But if there are, what kinds of things happen then? What kinds of adjustments get made to the machinery, the tabulation machinery? How does that affect the process?
So if there's a variance that if you have a variance more than that, you expand the audit. So it just keeps expanding. So you hand count more ballots
Yes.
until there's an acceptable range. But we've never had a discrepancy in any of our audits, random audits or any other kind of audit. They're 100%. The machines are really good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any additional questions we may answer?
Not a question, but nice job in explaining the process.
Thank you. We have a lot of pride in the work that we do.
They're rock stars. They're
Yeah.
the best.
We still have time for questions, but I wanted to say a couple of things, just a little more housekeeping too. There are a couple of other resources on our website that you might check out if you still have questions, you're still interested. And one is that we have the Observer training video from February. It's still on our website. And we also have a video called Path of the Ballot that one of my colleagues, Emmett O'Connell, who works there in the auditor's office, worked really hard on. It's a great little video, and you should check it out. And our website is Thurston, WA votes.gov. So thurstonwavotes.gov. Thurston Wa Votes, all one word. If you have any questions, you can shoot them to our email too. It's on the website. You'll see it there. And if you go to when you get to our website, there's a big button that says current election. Just click on that. The Observer training is in there. The Observer manual, handouts, things like that. And so just make sure you check out those resources. The Path of the Ballot video is actually on the front page. There's like a little sidebar. If you look there, it should say Path of the Ballot. If you can't find anything there, there's a search bar at the top. Just search it and it'll pop right up. It's fairly well organized too, so shouldn't have any problems. But if you do, just let us know. Does anybody have anything else for us right now?
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate you all coming and being engaged in this process. It's really important to us. Like Jack said, we're really proud of the work that we do, and we look forward to seeing you at the Ballot Processing Center. Again, you'll schedule with your with the party, and if you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks.